Welcome to our cultural intelligence journey. And I say it's impossible to not work interculturally when we consider all of our cultural and identities. So that can be religion, gender, race, ethnicity, marital status, ability, disability, political view, weight, height, whether you're from an urban or a rural area, your socioeconomic level, your age, your sexual orientation, your educational level, whether you're a native speaker or not, how you're dressed. These all influence how people see us and how we see others, and the judgments or assumptions we might be making based on these cultural identities. Yeah. Crucial due to the woke offense. Yes, thank you. All right. And people saying they love this work. And really, when I first started in coaching, I'd had a lot of international experience. That's why I was invited to join the ICF board, global board, to run for it. And I was thinking more about the international, but certainly as I've dived into and gotten more training and experience, I see it as this whole. And it's been so fun to work this way. I've learned from others, some of you on the call. So again, thank you. And yes, John, thanks for your comment. Mostly yes, but occasionally I find myself in cultural situations I struggle to navigate. So we're going to work on that. And I see a note, someone saying they hear an ego. I think you mean echo. I'm not hearing an echo. So, but John is here to help if we run into any issues. So thank you for sharing. And this is where cultural intelligence and my master certified coach credential have led me. This is not where I've started. So the photo on the left is me in Bali. I spent 6 weeks there as part of a 3-month Asia Pacific journey of training, coaching, and speaking. And we were celebrating my birthday, which I've also just celebrated. And I was saying to John and to Dale, our guest speaker today, that this feels like another birthday celebration. So thank you for coming and being here. And I'm celebrating you and the opportunity to be together. The middle is the first NGO Leadership Coaching Summit. It was sponsored by Ethical Coach, which is now coaching.com. And it's related to WBEX, the World Business Executive Coaching Summit. So out of that came an opportunity for me to serve on the WBEX panel. And then my other photo is at the ICF Converge, the first one they had, and it was on cultural competence. And I was introducing the rest of our advisory team after serving on the ICF Global Board. So this is where cultural intelligence and my MCC have led me or taken me. But again, it is not where I started. I would be embarrassed to tell you how long it took me to understand that how cultural intelligence is for me, meeting a need that is there in the world based on my unique gifts, strengths, and experiences in training. So I want to make this process easier for you. And we also have Dale Savage. So Dale and I had a conversation, a pre-conversation. So this is her quote from that pre-conversation. And Dale, I'll invite you to read or speak to where cultural intelligence and the integration of cultural intelligence with the coaching competencies has taken you?
Well, thank you, Marilyn. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and I can truly say it is with enthusiasm and a true generosity of spirit. I believe that I'm here. Um, the work has certainly changed my thinking. It has changed my life. It has contributed immensely to my business. And I was and am experiencing still a great amount of financial security based on how I'm using this wonderful information and weaving it into not only my work but my life. And I think that's the greatest impact for me.
Mm.
It's all of it. So thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Dale. And as part of our program, we have alumni like Dale who come back and meet with current participants and share how they're applying it. And that's what we've been hearing is it's in personal life. It's on the pickleball court, was an example from the last alumni call, as well as how you're using it with your coaching clients. So thanks for sharing that. And I'm celebrating with you how you're applying it and how it's contributed to your income and impact. So what is cultural intelligence and why now? Well, we're really looking at meeting market and ICF expectations and opportunities. So the ICF expectations, identities are mentioned in 4 of the ICF 8 core competencies. So it is expected in terms of ICF now, but how many of you were trained in cultural intelligence as part of your coach training? Can we see that in the chat? If you were trained in cultural intelligence as part of your coach training, then write yes. And if not, no. Thank you. Over a little bit. Whoops. Okay. I'm playing with the picture here. The picture disappeared. No. Okay. Maybe you can work on that a little bit, John. So meeting market expectations, we live in a very diverse global world, globally connected world. So the market is expecting us to have cultural intelligence as well, high cultural intelligence. And there's lots of opportunities. And it's also to avoid misunderstandings and further harm. And I'm going to give you a quick example of that. So someone that I was mentoring, their mentee had mentioned multiple times during the session as we were listening together and I was providing feedback that they were the only Black female on their team and how that was, a little bit about their experience with that. And the coach didn't ask any further questions or say, what is your experience of that? Or would you like to talk more about what that's like for you to be the only Black female on the team? And normally in coaching, if someone brought up something several times, you would be addressing it. So I asked, what was going on that you didn't inquire more about this? And they said they were afraid they might offend the client. They weren't sure how to address it. And when we just skip over things like that, if someone's presenting a part of their identity and the impact that it has on them, and we're not addressing that with them, then that can feel like a slight. Like, here's someone else that doesn't get it, and they're not talking with me about it. So it's really important to avoid further harm and misunderstandings. That's why I chose this image. It's like, what? You seem angry at me, but I'm not sure I'm getting the point, or what's going on here. So we want clients to feel completely heard and understood so that they can achieve their dreams, their vision, their goals with greater ease. And that's feedback that Tammy Hollingsworth Dowd has received from her clients, and she's an alumni on the call today. And it impacts trust. When we get to the 3 examples that we'll be sharing and invite you to consider how you would handle these as coaches, then one of them is around establishing trust and the agreement. And we'll hear from Dale when we get to the examples again also. So yes, I can see that a bit due to the international of the training. No, you didn't receive the training, but it is essential. And just by myself, not fully discussed. Yeah, so thank you. This is a need that I saw and created my own program then that integrates the cultural intelligence with the coaching competencies in 2014. So I've been doing that for quite some time, and coaching for 25 years now in 40 different countries. So what is cultural intelligence and why now? Why now? I loved this image also. I understand I will never understand, however, I stand with you. So we're always learning, right? We're constantly learning. That's one of the things I love about coaching as a profession, is the opportunity to keep learning. We can't ever say, including me, I'm 100% culturally intelligent now, because there's always more that we can learn. And one of the challenges that was sent in was, I want to find out more what I don't know about I don't know. So we may not ever fully understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, but we want to make an attempt to understand that, to be there with them and explore the impact of their cultural identities. So this has shown up more and more, right? Me Too, Black Lives Matter, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We have people that come to the program that's been their whole career, is DEIB, or we've had an ambassador, a former ambassador, and someone with a graduate degree in cultural anthropology, people that have their own coach training programs, and they want to dive in and learn more and create this greater impact. And for those of you that work with leaders and teams and organizations, they've made pledges about Black Lives Matter, Me Too, DEIB, and now they're at the point where they're being held accountable. And how are they doing on meeting those goals and those pledges? And they can really use the support and the tools that culturally intelligent coaches have in order to help them meet those goals in their organization and out in the world. So that's a little bit about increasing impact and income with cultural intelligence. I'll share the definition of cultural intelligence. It's on my mentor coaching page, which we're going to pull up towards the end of the program. But it's really about our understanding our own and others' cultural identities, values, beliefs, rank, and effectively applying that understanding in our behavior and in our communication. So here we are, and we've talked a little bit about cultural intelligence and where it's taken me, where it's taken Dale, the impact that it can have. And now I'm going to invite you to do some centering with me. It's just going to take a minute, and it's an invitation. It's not a have to, but in coaching presence, that's something that allows for space, silence, pause, reflection. And when we do that, it changes the blood flow in our brain, as we know, from the back of the brain where we're more reactive, and maybe just even hearing about Me Too and Black Lives Matter and DEIB has, raised some reactions for you. And so now here's a chance to calm ourselves and our bodies down and move from the unconscious, where we operate 98% of the time. I was so surprised to learn that when I did the research for my book, Breaking Free from Bias. And, but, it's true. And so we're going to take a minute. And I invite you to stand as you're able. I'm already standing today. And to have your feet firmly planted on the ground, whether you're sitting or standing. To close your eyes and begin that deep diaphragmatic breathing. And just experience that for a moment. You're breathing deeply, your feet are firmly planted, your eyes are closed, you may be standing. Now I invite you to shift your body slightly to the left, experience that space, come back to center. Shift your body slightly to the right, experience that space, come back to center. Shift your body slightly forward, experience that space, come back to center. And as you shift your body slightly back, I invite you to imagine a great big fat dinosaur tail that's extending from the back of your body, and the tip of the tail is also in firm contact with the ground. Within that dinosaur tail, as a representation of all your gifts, strengths, abilities, experiences that have brought you to this point in your life and will be with you as you move forward. So I invite you to experience that. Come back to center. Open your eyes. And as you're doing that, I invite you to consider what you might want to do with your dinosaur tail. So some people like to kind of keep it wrapped around them like a security blanket. Others want to use it like a pillow on the back of their chair that they can lean back on at any time and experience all the strengths that they bring. And I use this with my United Nations clients. I've been coaching United Nations leaders around the world in different hotspots. And they said, oh, I have a centering time or meditation or prayer at home before I leave for work or when I come back, but I haven't ever thought about doing this throughout the day during my business day. And it really helps because they are making decisions for a lot of lives to remember everything that they're bringing. And so I'm just wondering what this experience has been like for you, if you want to write it in the chat, and if you use anything like this to step out of the unconscious into the conscious so you can be fully present. And while you're doing that, I mentioned the working with leaders and teams. I'm just curious how many of you are working with leaders and teams? And if so, go ahead and write that in the chat, a yes or a no. It's the need for this has just really exploded. And you might have seen the quote from the research by Ang, Van Dyne, and Rockstuhl, that 90% of leading executives in 68 countries identified the intercultural as one of the most important competencies. And one of our alumni, Antonia Bowring, wrote an article for Forbes, "The Question That Changes Everything." That was the impact that she experienced in her coaching, going through the program. And really, people say, since they haven't had the training in this with coaching, they may have had training around it before, but it takes the full 3 months to get comfortable doing it. But once she did, it really changed everything. And I say, I'm seeing some comments about the heavy tail, picking it up, what you're doing with that. Thank you. And some of you who are working with leaders and teams. So great. And that is not my own exercise. I learned that from the author of Presence-Based Coaching, Doug Silsby, and he said he learned it from the Strozzi Institute. And if you do it 10 times a day, it will change your life. And someone is also saying it feels like the PQ reps. Yeah, thank you. Okay. And I did mention the ICF competencies. So the 4 ICF competencies that the cultural intelligence relates to are ethics, yes, ethics, and mindset, and trust, and listening. So being sensitive to cultural identities, environments, experiences, values, and belief is written as part of the definition, the International Coaching Definition, Federation definition of ethics. So that's the first one. Starting there, it's something that we need to pay attention to. And I know that you all are ethical and trusting that you're not putting yourself out there as culturally intelligent coaches unless you've had some training and experiencing with it. Just as we know, going into coaching, if we approach organizations and say we have a coach and they say, oh, we had a bad experience, it was because it wasn't really a trained coach. So I appreciate your attention to ethics. So this is a taste of a big topic, and we're going to share 3 case examples, looking at the impact, exploring cultural identities for client and coach, how it can impact your income, including cross-cultural communication, establishing trust and agreement, and then touch on invisible cultural identities. So, and you'll be hearing from both Dale and I here, and this is why I have the image of the fish in the market. Frequently, if we go to the market, they'll give you a little taste of something. And that's, cultural intelligence can be graduate programs. So I can't cover everything in an hour. We're covering as much as possible to give you this taste. So my first example is on speaking up. How many of you have run into this with your clients? Either being told they need to speak up, or they're not speaking up enough. Or your client may say, I'm trying to speak up in a meeting, but everyone else is taking up too much space. Or I say something and someone else takes my idea. These are all things that can come up. So my situation with this, and then we'll hear from Dale and the rest of you. Yes, an issue for many to most is this was a client, their boss said, you need to speak up more and step up more into your leadership. And in order to move up in the organization, we want you to move up in the organization. This hasn't just been one woman. This has been multiple women. So it was male boss, female leader, you need to speak up more. And when I asked about culture, they, well, first let's start with that. Someone comes to you and you're, of course, considering what the sponsor is asking for, as well as the leader. And the boss says, you need to speak up. How would you handle that? What would be some of your first steps? Feel free to write in the chat. And Dale, feel free to speak to this as well. Well, what I did was to check with the leader. Is this your goal also, or is it just the sponsor's goal for you? Do you feel like you want to speak up? And they said, yes. And so my client had a lot of similar cultural identities to me. She was, same gender, same generation, lived in my same state, and same race, but one key difference. When I asked, tell me a little bit about your culture and how it might be affecting this request to speak up more, that you also want to learn how to do. And immediately, this was our first session, and she'd written about it because I asked about it in my welcome document. She said, well, I grew up in a rural area. So that was a cultural difference. I grew up in the city. She grew up in a farm. And what I observed growing up was that it was the men who were speaking up and the women were in the background. So, they would have dinner. The men would go sit around the table and chat. The women would be in the kitchen cleaning up. And so she didn't have a role model like I had. My parents were both physicians and had a very equal partnership in terms of their marriage. So my mom had no trouble speaking up, but that's not what she saw. So this was something she knew she had to change, this experience, this belief, this value that she grew up with around women speaking up. So how did that contribute to her impact? My client's impact is that she learned to speak up more. And there were certain situations that were more challenging than others. And we learned what was behind that and how to have a crucial conversation with someone who had been interrupting her as she tried to speak up more. And so she was promoted in the organization as she learned to speak up. more, and that's what they were looking for out of the coaching, the organization, and what the client was looking for. And then how did it impact my success? It went well, my income is because this was successful. The organization wanted me to do more work with them. And then how has it contributed to alumni success? How has it contributed for you, Dale, when you've explored the cultural identities with your client?
Well, Marilyn, I have a very specific example of speaking up, and it came with a woman I'm working with, a Black female, very articulate, wonderful person, and we are working in career transition, and so that was very important for her. She knew she has a wonderful, big, hairy, audacious goal. She's in her mid-30s, and she said to me, Dale, by the time I'm 50, I would really like to earn my income by serving on corporate boards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay. And so she said, but I need to position myself in a way that will make me attractive. And I see the experiences that I need. So we went through, fast forward, we went through the list of criteria, really, that she needed to induce this goal of hers. And we came upon a position. She interviewed, she was offered the position, and the offer she received was not what she expected. And quite frankly, it wasn't what I expected. And so what she knew she had to do in terms of speaking, she said, Dale, negotiating for myself. I said, oh, so you have to speak up for yourself. And my question to her is, what is holding you back right now? Because you have this big goal. What is holding you back? We had a marvelous conversation about worth, how she saw herself, how she was feeling it for the rest of the world. Now she's moving from the United States to Canada for this job. And it was interesting as she was attempting to understand that culture and how they were explaining benefits and income and how this might translate back to the United States. Marilyn, it was such an interesting example of multicultural things happening to her, to the position that she was going to, how I could support her in this simply by continuing to ask her more questions about what she knows and what she doesn't know, and how she might explore that further. Would she be willing to explore it further? Well, the good news is that she was able to have several breakthroughs. The negotiation process went back and forth a couple of times. She did accept the offer. And I guess that is wonderful news for her. She is settled in Canada now, and has a true sense of greater understanding, even before she walks into the door of her new position, what it's like to work with different individuals in the organization simply through negotiation, and a positive, successful negotiation at that. So that type of speaking up and really challenging herself to know her worth and going after that, and not, it was wonderful to see. How did it impact me? Well, I work with a lot of individual clients, and she has hired me to continue with her on this journey as she begins this new job in a new role. So it is wonderful to see, fabulous to experience. And I don't believe I would have been as prepared for this moment with my client, because I could see it on her face. It wasn't that she couldn't negotiate. She couldn't negotiate for herself.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful example. And thank you for sharing how that's contributed to her success and your success. Yeah, that's so lovely. Yes, and kind of a contrast to this, actually, at that ICF Converge, there was a presenter who shared a similar example. It was someone who they were brought in by the sponsor to help this female leader from Korea speak up more, and they didn't check with the client to see if that was their goal. They just assumed this is the sponsor's goal and went with it, and really not taking into consideration what it would be like for this woman who wasn't raised, in the U.S. to have to step up and speak up more, and what, how that fit with her culture. And so it's really important to check with both people and to see what's underneath that not speaking up and how that might need to be addressed. And the organization can make some changes too. It doesn't have to be all on the individual. So the organization could, if the person, your client, says, I'm really uncomfortable with this, then the organization can say, please submit your comments in writing before the meeting starts, or they can call on them, because that's what they're used to in their culture, is not just speaking up out of turn, but being called on, or they could break into smaller groups and then come back in the team meeting. So there's different ways of handling it, and it doesn't all have to be on the individual to change, and that can be missed. Yeah. Okay. So second one, cross-cultural communication, establishing trust in the agreement. So the situation that I had was, and I'm going to go kind of quickly on this because we're getting a little closer to time, and I want to leave 10 minutes at the end for questions. So we've got about 10 more minutes here of how to avoid misunderstandings on this. So I had an organization based in Japan, and they invited me to come do some coaching with some of their senior leaders. And so the differences here, you can see at the top, example, hierarchical indirect versus egalitarian direct. So we think of, and the research has shown in the US, we tend to be more direct communicators. We use more words. And in some of the Asian culture, it is more indirect, more formal, more hierarchical. So that means that the person, the elder, or the person with the higher rank would speak first, and you would wait until you were called on, or till the others had spoken. And so how would you handle this? This is an organization with a different culture than yours, and you're establishing how you're going to work together. So how would you handle that, considering those differences? Anyone want to speak to that? I'm seeing in the chat, yeah, how do you like to receive feedback and to build the relationship first? Okay, yes. So I just put it out there and said, I'm a very Western direct communicator. I understand, your cultural norm is to be less direct. And so how do you want me to approach working with your leaders? Should I tone down my directness, or show up more my usual direct self? And they said, oh, no, we want you to be direct because our leaders are working internationally. We have offices around the world, including the US, and they need to learn how to communicate directly. Well, if I had just said, well, I know the Japanese culture is less direct, so I'm going to be less direct, they wouldn't have gotten what they were paying for, what they wanted. And if I had just come in my normal direct self, that's not what they'd wanted, and we hadn't discussed that, then they could have said, oh, she's so rude and offensive. So it's really important to clarify. And so this gave these leaders an opportunity to experience some directness that they were also experiencing in the marketplace. And then again, because we were able to clarify this, I had continued work with this organization. And thank you. We've got somebody sharing a resource in the chat. And Dale, do you have any quick comment here?
Yes, I want to say that as again, as an American, it's interesting to me. I've had the good fortune of working with two very different organizations from Germany. And one is a large distribution center here in the United States. And the gentleman who really helped bring this to fruition here in the US, is from Germany. And he is very pro coaching. And when I first met him, it was so interesting because he was talking about an individual that he wanted me to coach, and he had hired me for this position. But now we're talking about this individual, and I'm listening, and I looked at him and I said, I would like to stop you right now. And he said, okay. And I said, well, I'm hearing a lot about this other individual, and I'm attempting to understand from your point of view and where you are coming from in terms of how you see this individual working for your German company in the United States. And I said, this is only a feeling I have, but it feels like you're not telling me something. Is there something you're not telling me? And he just sat back and he said, say more. And I said, well, there's something about your cultural background that is coming through, but you're not saying it. And he said, you're absolutely right. No one has picked up on this, Dale. No one has understood this. How can this be? How did you hear this? And quite frankly, I was attempting to understand how this gentleman, who had lived in the United States for a very, very long time, was telling me about the manager that he wanted me to work with. It wasn't quite coming together, and I knew it because there was something missing about his background that I needed that information. He said, no one has ever asked me about my culture. No one. And from that moment on, why was it successful for me? Because I asked the one question. I have now worked for that organization for the past 2 years. So it has been a very nice, and I have learned so much more about the business, the culture. I had the good fortune of visiting Germany last summer. So it has just been a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I couldn't have done it without this information and a little bit more cultural intelligence that I gleaned from the program, Marilyn. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
The final example is invisible cultural identity. So this can be, we've had someone who calls themselves a neurodiversity champion that's gone through this program. They have ADHD, and they primarily work with people that have ADHD. And one of their questions was, should I reveal this in my recording that I submit to ICF with my client, the client recording? And they decided yes, they would, because it's a kind of a different cadence, a different rhythm, the conversation. And they thought if the ICF assessor wasn't attuned to this, they might wonder about the cadence, the rhythm, and how they were each showing up. And they did. So they mentioned it in the recording, and they did pass at MCC level. So that did contribute to their impact and their success. And so it can be things, I had that circle with many different cultural identities, and there are even more. And I know someone else who has lupus, and it impacts their energy. And they were questioning whether to let their organization know about that, or if that's something that they should just keep to themselves. And so these are things that invisible cultural identities that also have an impact on our coaching and on our clients. So I just wanted to mention that, and I think we're getting close on time. So invite you to write, what are you taking away from today? To write that in the chat, because we know as coaches, when you capture the learning and when you decide what you're going to do about something, then there's more accountability, you're more likely to follow through. And now John is going to take us to the mentor coaching page of our website, because I know many of you are coaches that are looking for continuing learning, development, and advancing your ICF credential. And so we're going to go through here. And so it's expected by ICF and the marketplace is the cultural intelligence. And that is a key aspect of our program, is that it's integrated so that you can stay on the leading edge and increase your impact and income. And the CCEs, you get 30 ICF CCEs for this program. It's an intensive 3-month program. So you're getting the 10 mentor coaching hours, plus you're doing learning on your own. We've got recordings from people who've successfully passed their MCC, alumni from our program, and their PCC. And so you have the opportunity to listen to those, to some of my recordings. You get my book, Breaking Free from Bias, book chapters, and so if we can pause there, go back up just for a minute, John, there we go. So 26 in core competencies, that's more than what's required for your 3-year credential renewal if you're renewing. And so we have people that come through and they've been through their first credential and their MCC, and they repeat just to keep the learning edge. We have more and more MCCs now who want to do the program because they didn't get that cultural intelligence in their training. And you get feedback from not only me, but with my confidence building style, but from a global diverse colleagues. And I have people that are from the ADHD community, or they're from the Seattle community, and they want to break out of the group that they were trained with and be exposed to some different perspectives and learn from others with different trainings. So that's another advantage to the program. Okay, now we can keep going down. Thanks, John. And we will come back for the questions, the Q&A. Here's Liz Dobbins, who's been through the program several times and speaking to how she's acquired more coaching clients and her master classes have expanded globally. And we have a very high credentialing success rate since 2014. And the opportunity to earn more, increase your income, because that's been shown that happens with the ICF credential, as well as the cultural intelligence, as you've heard today. And you get written and oral feedback from me and your colleagues. And let's keep scrolling down, John. Thanks. Oh yeah, I haven't mentioned yet that you have the opportunity to earn your culturally intelligent coaching certificate, which sets you apart, and you can use that in your marketing as a marketing differential. And and then you get the CCEs. And so here's opportunities, these buttons to sign up for the mentor coaching and CQ coaching certificate. And then we'll scroll down to the dates. Here's everything that you get. As I've mentioned, the mentor coaching sessions, the feedback, the private community. So we use Slack to communicate and share learnings and resources in between, some more testimonials, and let's keep going. So here's the dates. It starts September 19th and goes through December 12th. So meeting every other Tuesday at this time that we met today. It's the most international friendly that I could find. I only offer this twice a year. You can see the investment to the left, and also a place where you can click to learn more about the new proctored exam. And we have a video that's been shared, someone who passed that with our group. That's one of the resources that we provide. And it's also in the FAQ section below. So stay on the leading edge with us and register. We'd love to have you. We have registrations already started. It's limited to 10 per ICF standards. And so we still have some spots available. And you can also contact me, and there'll be some follow-up if you want to set up a time to discuss if this is right for you right now, because I want to do it when it's right for you. And you've heard where it can take you from Dale and I today. All right, so we just, I think, scroll down, John, and to show where the FAQs are. And then we'll go to questions and answers. You can see my awards, my experience, and then the FAQ section, and then we'll go back for questions. Okay, I say, when is the best time to apply for the ICF credential? Now, because they're always changing, and it gets more rigorous. It doesn't get less. And some tips for the exam are there. And where to sign up.